Hi, I'm R.A. Salvatore, Bob Salvatore. Been writing fantasy books for 25 years now and going strong, and you're listening to GenreTainment.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of GenreTainment over here at SciFiPulseRadio.com. We're your hosts, Marx
and Julie, and GenreTainment is where we talk about what's happening in the world of film, TV, and web series. We give you interviews with writers, directors, producers, and actors in both independent and not so independent creations. And for today's show, we chat with award-winning author and podcaster Mur Lafferty.
She's been podcasting since 2004. Her podcast, I Should Be Writing, gives interviews and tips that are extremely helpful to writers.
I just love that name. I should be writing, because that's basically what most writers are saying about 80% of the time.
Oh, yeah.
She tells us how she got started in podcasting and writing, and she gives great tips for writers, and we cover her work on Escape Pod and Pseudopod and much more.
Mm-hmm. Now, before we get to the featured interview, I do want to let everyone know that I'll be making appearances at Miami Web Fest and at the University of New Orleans for my new book, Television on the Wild Wild Web.
Or as I say it correctly, New Orleans.
New Orleans.
New Orleans.
So please bear with us, as October we may have to skip a few weeks.
Yeah.
Now, if you're interested in making web series or learning how to use social media marketing or crowdfunding for your projects, you might just want to click on over to Amazon to pick up a copy in print or on Kindle, because it is available now.
Yes.
Not only would it help you, but it would help support the show.
So yay!
And I'm sure my publisher would be happy too.
Yes, I'm pretty sure. Now, one last thing before we get started with the interview. We do want to mention that the music you just heard at the beginning of the show was a snippet from the theme song for our web series, Reality on Demand. It's a song composed and performed by our friend T-Sean Hardy. You can find our web series at realityondemandseries.com.
And now our interview with writer Mur Lafferty. Well, welcome to the show, Mur.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, you've been podcasting, I think, since 2005. Four, really? Wow.
2004, yep.
Even longer. And your podcast, I Should Be Writing, has won 2007 Parsec Award for Best Writing Podcast. And all along, you have been writing. You've been writing a number of short stories, books. So I guess first off, let's talk about what got you started in podcasting and what's got you sticking with it.
Well, podcasting kind of began in August 2004, and a friend had told me about it in October, and I thought, this is quite unoriginal. I thought, that's kind of cool. I would like to do that. And so essentially I just kind of racked my brain about what to do, what to write or what to record on. And I came up with just a sort of a audio diary kind of thing that included a nonfiction geeky essay that I was writing. I was writing a lot of essays at the time. And so I launched my first podcast in December. And then later in 2005, there was only one writer's podcast out there, and that was The Secrets by Michael A. Stackpole. Was it The Secrets? Now I'm thinking of that book.
Yeah, I think so. I think it is.
Anyway,
he always says it really dramatic. The Secrets.
Yes, I know. And I thought that I was learning a lot of things about writing and submission, but I could come at it from a beginner's level, or rather someone who knew enough to know that, say, what a rejection really meant, which means they don't want your story, not they hate you forever, or you're a crap writer and you'll never, ever, ever sell anything. And so I thought about doing a podcast based on those kinds of fears that beginning writers have. Because I was completely unpublished at the time, I started doing interviews with pros just to make sure I wasn't steering people completely wrong. Mm-hmm. And I've done a variety of shows ever since then, but I've kept up with I Should Be Writing since 2005.
Great. And also I should say that it is storming here. So if, to our audience, if they hear distortion or anything crazy or any what sounds like bombs in the background, it's just thunder. So how long have you been writing? How long? So you hadn't been published yet in 2004, but you had been writing already. How long had you been writing before then?
Well, I've been writing since I was in elementary school, but wanted to be a writer my whole life. But when I got to college, I found out that some people were better than me. And for some reason, I took that as a signal that I should stop, not I should work harder. So I actually quit and then, graduated from college and got a job and got married and writing suddenly became something I would do someday. And then met Richard Dansky and we became friends, and he was suggesting, that someday's never going to come. You actually need to get started now if, what's wrong with right now. So I really feel like I've only been writing since 2001, 2002, seriously. Mm-hmm. And then, so just I've been doing RPG stuff, some magazine stuff, short stories, novels, things like that.
I really like your show because not only does it have good advice for writers, but I think you also offer a really personal touch to it, where, you really talk about your personal struggles with writing and probably more so than any other podcast I listen to. And that really helps, I think, if you're a writer listening to that and you're struggling, that it's not just you or something.
I always feel like I'm whining, but I hear that a lot. That it is helpful to people to know that things like being convinced that you're absolute crap or depression or things like that are quite frequent and normal, and just because you're feeling it doesn't mean you're all alone.
Mm-hmm. Well, so many writers, they feel like when they're talking publicly, they have to be all smiles and talk about how great everything is and such, and how easy it was for them to write this and such. And that can fool other people thinking that if they're struggling, that there must be something wrong with them. So, but your show, definitely lifts that veil.
Yeah. I often also worry that it's going to tell people that, that things don't get any better. It's like I always worry it's going to be, two sides of the same coin. It's like, oh, wow, I'm not alone in feeling like this. Or, oh, gosh, Mur is established and has published 2 professional books and she still feels this way. Does this mean this anxiety is never going to go away?
Wait, you mean being a writer isn't easy?
You're funny. I like you.
That's how you make a writer laugh.
So now, besides podcasting and of course writing, also online, you have been a host and editor of Escape Pod and Pseudopod at various times, which are really, really cool.
Very cool, yeah.
Online shows, free shows where you can listen to some really cool stories. Can you tell our audience a little bit more about those projects and how you got involved in them?
Sure. I was friends with Steve Ely, who was the founder of Escape Artists, and he was talking a long time ago about how he wanted to branch out and do some new stuff. And I sort of thought up the name Pseudopod as a name for a horror podcast, because it's kind of like a Cthulhu type tentacle. And he liked it, and he asked me if I wanted to help edit it since I came up with the name, and I said sure. So he got me and Ben Phillips on as co-editors, and I did that for a little while. But at the time, I had taken on a new day job, and I was biting off a bit more than I could chew, so I had to step down. And then a couple of years later, Escape Pod was looking for a new editor, and they approached me. And I said yes, and that was exciting, but then had to step down from that again because I was doing too much. I got into grad school. And since then I have graduated from grad school, so I've gone back to Escape Pod as a co-editor, kind of actually a editor at large for Escape Artists right now.
Cool.
Great. And Escape Pod is the sci-fi one, and Pseudopod's the horror one. So,
yes.
And then there's a fantasy one too. But
yes, Podcastle.
Podcastle. I couldn't remember that one's name. Sorry.
Now, you mentioned that you went back to school to get your master's. What was that experience like?
Where'd you go and what's your degree in?
I went to University of Southern Maine, their Stone Coast program, which is a low residency program, and I got MFA in popular fiction.
Very nice.
So they have a great low residency program where you go to Maine twice a year for 10 days, and then you do lectures and workshops, and then you go home and write for 6 months. And
wow.
They have their popular fiction program has all of the fiction, teaches all the stuff about all the fiction that the other MFA programs turn their noses up at, such as science fiction, fantasy, romance, crime, chick lit, all that stuff.
Yeah, I remember when Marx and I were both we went to the same university, and when you took the creative writing class, we weren't allowed to write fiction. We weren't allowed to write fantasy, science fiction, horror, or anything that took place in the past, anything that takes place in the future, and you could only write about experiences that you personally experienced. It's like, well, we're 19. Like, I mean, how many of us have like really interesting life experiences, you know? I mean, I'm sure there are some 19-year-olds in this world that do, but most people, they're not as deep at that age as we tend to think we are. And it just wasn't really encouraging very creative writing. So then it was really embarrassing because they'd want you to read the stuff out loud, but then if you followed the rules, then people were like, oh, so something like that really happened to her.
Yeah.
And it was the most uncreative, creative writing class, I think, in the history of the world.
Wow, that sounds awful.
It is terrible.
It was bad. I was we were in different classes, but in my classes, one girl read a story about her character being raped, and everybody got real quiet, and they all just assumed that she must have been raped, and she's like, "What? I don't understand."
Well, and then I wrote this poem about when I was in Croatia in the late 90s. And I was there for a while, and there was the dumbest thing in the world was to have a soccer match between the Croats and the Serbs, but they did.
Wow.
And I was in Croatia at the time, and I mean, like, we're walking under overhangs of buildings because so many guns are getting fired in the air, and people are tossing smoke bombs. This is what they do when they're happy. Yeah. And so, but I wrote that, and at first he was going to dock my grade because I was writing about something I couldn't possibly have any personal knowledge of, and I was like, oh, you want to bet?
Wow.
I told him what I was writing about, and and he was like, oh. So yeah, that was
So it sounds like if you want to do sci-fi or
go to Maine.
Yeah, go to Maine.
Yeah. I know there are a couple of other popular fiction programs, but if you are a writer of anything fantastical or light or things that you don't normally see on the Booker Prize list, might want to look deeper into MFA programs and make sure they're not going to laugh you out of the college.
I have a question about that then. What is your opinion about this? Because I've always found this odd. Like that, whenever you try to write in school, the professors and the doctors, they all really kind of snub their nose at anything that's, fantasy or sci-fi or romance. But then again, what you study in school before you get to college is Frankenstein, Dracula.
Yep. Shakespeare.
Pride and Prejudice. If Shakespeare
Poe.
had a lot of ghosts and fantastical stuff, and then that's okay. But if it were written in the last 100 years, they just assume it's crap.
Mm-hmm.
How does that, how does that in your mind work for them? Because I haven't figured it out yet.
I don't know how it works for them. I just kind of ignore it at this point. It's not my audience. They're not my teachers. I don't care. I know that sounds kind of rude, but really, I just think, what is the point of worrying about this? Because we didn't have, you'd think that we Stone Coast also had a fiction program, and they were more literary fiction, even though they just called it fiction. And when they would get bitter, they would call themselves unpopular fiction while we were popular fiction. And the poet said we were more fun to hang out with. I just want to say that because they were all dark and dark and depressing and stuff. And we're just like, spaceships, fairies, yay! But, speaking honestly, it's a strange chasm that probably shouldn't be there. It's like we don't respect them because they think that having a middle-aged man stare out of a window and think about how he wants to have sex with the TA that in the class he's teaching is literature. While we're like, oh, please give me 200 more pages on that. And
amen, sister.
Don't be
like
his teaching assistant. That's for sure.
She's right.
But they say that's like high literature, while things like Ancillary Justice by Anne Leckie is just crap because it's science fiction.
Yeah.
Which Ancillary Justice is not crap. That's kind of my point. Just want to say that in case somebody wanted to grab that little soundbite and screw me with it. But
hopefully they'll get the gist. Yeah.
But yeah, if someone's gonna put down, I'm not a good arguer. I'm very bad at arguing. I'm very bad at confrontation. So if somebody's gonna put down genre stuff, I don't have time for it. I don't have the time or the energy or the mental capacity to really argue. I'm just like, okay. And same for men who just like, oh, I don't read books by women. I'm not interested in the stories they have to tell. I'm like, okay.
Of course, you could always come back with them that I don't have time to care about what you're thinking because unlike the serious writers, I'm making a living at it.
Yeah, there's that. There's that.
Unlike you so-called better ones, I actually make a living.
Well, not technically yet, but I believe that is a lot of, I believe on the whole, genre writers do tend to be able to support themselves a little better than a lot of literary fiction, unless it's endorsed by Oprah.
Yeah. Man, and she's only got that one little cable channel now. We're all screwed.
So we need an Oprah for sci-fi. Can Will Wheaton do that?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. I really want to be covered on Sword and Laser, but it hasn't happened yet.
There's still time.
Well, one more question about the master's degree.
Sure.
So what prompted you to do that? Because I know a lot of people do it either because they're straight out of their earlier degree and that's just what they lead to when they're younger, or they do it because they want to teach. What was your motivation to do that? Was it just simply to learn, or what other factors?
You're the first person to actually assume that I may have wanted to learn. I'm impressed. Everyone else is just like, what do you want to do that for? I'm like, because I want to learn stuff. Really, I waited for a long time. I knew I wanted some sort of continued education, but I wasn't sure how. And I was weighing the MFA with the Clarion Writers Workshop for a long time and just trying to do the whole pros and cons. And eventually decided to go with the MFA because of, yes, it cost more, but the time away from my family would be in 10-day chunks over 2 years instead of 6 weeks, one big 6-week chunk. And also I've heard that it's such a boot camp like atmosphere. A lot of times when you come home from Clarion, you can't write. You're just kind of stunned. And that's probably because your subconscious is kind of mulling over everything you learned. And when you start writing again, you perhaps end up like John Chu and you win a Hugo. So yay, John Chu. But I didn't want to do that. I'd already gotten a book deal, and the idea of stopping writing scared the hell out of me. And I knew I didn't have to, but and then another factor was I wanted to be in a larger group of writers because yes, we laughed at the literary fiction people, but there were some really talented people that I got to spend time with. I met some amazing poets, some amazing nonfiction writers. And in our pop fiction group, there were crime writers and cozy writers and chick lit writers. And I learned a lot from them. So I wanted a larger variety of fellow students. And Clarion mainly focuses on short stories. And I don't write a lot of short stories these days. So while Clarion is a wonderful, wonderful program for science fiction and fantasy writers, sometimes it's best to look beyond at the other things it focuses on before you make your decision. And also, James Patrick Kelly is a friend of mine, and he has been a supporter of me for years and years. He was an early listener to the podcast, and we started corresponding, I think, in early 2006. I'm not sure. But anyway, he's been a longtime supporter, and he teaches there. And so he was one of the major factors. I really wanted to go, and, he'd been a friend and had given me advice, but I really wanted to go and officially learn under him. So Jim Kelly was a big part of it too.
That's great. Now, you did mention someone else winning an award, but we know that you won one too, the John W. Campbell Award.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? About
the award and what you won it for?
Yeah, just like what you won it for and how big it was and what you did.
How big it was. What was the physical size of the award?
Tell us all about it. Not everybody knows about this. So
No, it's fine.
A little bit about it.
The Campbell Award is a strange thing. It is nominated on the same ballot and voted on the same ballot and given out at the same award ceremony as the Hugos, but they always take great pains to point out that it is not a Hugo Award. And
it's a great award. Congratulations.
But it's different because, and a lot of people don't understand this, but the Campbell Award is essentially for potential. They are looking at all the new writers and thinking, who are we going to see on the Hugo ballot in 10, 20 years? Who is going to add a lot to science fiction and fantasy? And a lot of people think you get awarded for one particular thing you wrote. but they just kind of look at what you've created so far and what they think you're going to create in the future. Because it looks like I was nominated for a 1,400-word short story that I wrote. I wasn't nominated for the short story. That short story called what we call the Campbell clock. It caused that to start ticking because it was my first pro sale. So once I sold a story for an amount of money that these Campbell people decided was pro, that began my 2-year slot of, okay, I'm eligible for the award in these 2 years. And that was the sale that got it started. But for me, a lot of people knew of the work that I'd been doing via podcast for years. So even though it looks like, why am I on the ballot for a 1,400-word story? People knew the stuff that I had done before. I had just gotten a book deal. So it's really a reward for potential. And the year before I won, and this year, the year after I won, someone who was actually on the short story Hugo ballot was nominated for the Campbell, and they both won. It was a very tight ballot this year, but I was very torn between two people, but one of the people was the woman who won, and I'm thinking, you can't really argue with someone on the Hugo ballot having the best potential. It's like,
Yeah.
it's right there.
Sure.
She's got a lot of potential because she's already on the Hugo ballot. So, it's an interesting award, and it's dear to my heart, not only because I won it, but I think what's interesting is, I guess you see this all over the place, but a lot of people who won the award, you don't hear from them very much, but a lot of people who lost the award are doing amazing things now, like George R.R. Martin and Lauren Bucas. Those are two big names that are Campbell losers. So it's just the fact, they say being nominated is an honor, and that's a cliche, but it really is.
Yeah, definitely in good company.
Exactly.
Speaking about your writing, you do have a series of books out where you have 2 of them and your Shambling series.
Yep.
Can you tell us a little bit more about your books?
Sure. My books are essentially, I like to call them Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy meets Neil Gaiman's Neverwhere, because
cool.
It's more of a story of a human woman who starts writing travel guides for monsters. So instead of you're just someone from the Midwest going to New York City, if you're a vampire going to New York City, you're going to need to know everything from where you can get food, where you can hunt, where you shouldn't hunt, where you can find a place to sleep that's light tight, things like that. The first book is about New York City and also about my main character learning, holy crap, there are monsters in the world. How do I deal with this? Okay, I write a travel book for them. But she's hired because the vampire who started the publishing company had everybody on staff that he needed except for someone who actually knew how to put together a travel book. So that's why he decided to hire a human. And the second book just came out in March, and that one takes our crew down to New Orleans to write a new travel book and get into trouble down there.
I've been hearing a lot of good things about those books.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I'm curious about your choice of shambling. You don't hear that word very often.
Yeah.
Where did you come up with that title or that's part of the title?
I just always thought that's the verb to describe how zombies walk. So instead of a walking tour, you need a shambling tour because that's how slow you're going to go.
Awesome.
So you do a podcast about writing. You are a writer. You've won an award on writing. So let's talk more about writing.
Okay.
Really? That's where you're going with that.
I know. Surprise, right?
Huh.
We're going to do miming, but you can't do that over the radio. So.
Yeah. I've been stuttering enough. Maybe I should try it this time around. It's one of those days.
Well, first off, let's talk a little bit about your method of writing. I'm just kind of curious, are you someone that outlines your books in advance or writes by the seat of your pants?
Or skirt.
I'm trying to be the kind of person to outline because I'm trying to throw my agent a whole bunch of book ideas so that she can try to sell them. But I am mainly a seat of the pants writer. This is proven to me time and again because I'm the kind of person that only I think, what's the metaphor? You've got the headlights on and you can see right in front of you. And you always can see right in front of you, but you can't see, way down the road. That's how I feel. Sometimes I don't know what's going to happen at the end of the chapter until I reach right before the end of the chapter. And then it just kind of comes to me. And so I really like that feeling. It makes me feel smart. But when it comes to things like writing an outline or trying to explain, say, if I'm trying to write a mystery and I try to do the whole clever thing of, well, then the detective figures everything out and then it's over. They're like, okay, well, how does that happen? I'm like, I don't know.
I haven't written it yet.
I've got a guy who's got a secret, and I just know it's going to affect the plot. My agent's like, okay, what's his secret? I'm like, I don't know. It'll come to me. I've at least been writing long enough to have the faith that it'll come to me. But it's really hard for me to plot it or outline. It's really, really hard.
It'd be a terrible secret if you already knew it. I mean, come on.
Exactly.
I like her. She promotes the idea that not always, you don't have to be anal retentive about details to get started.
No, not at all. I am mainly of the opinion that you write how you write. I actually got very discouraged one time when I was reading Ray Bradbury's Zen and the Art of Writing, and his opinion was, if you don't go to the typewriter every day with a song in your heart and a spring in your step and you love this work, then don't do it. And I'm like, well, crap. I like the stories I write, and I like having written, but writing sucks. So clearly I shouldn't be doing it. If I mean, how can I argue with Ray Bradbury?
I loved him, but yeah, he was, he doesn't know what it's like for those of us who are mere mortals, I think.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
He went to a typewriter and cranked out in a matter of days Fahrenheit 451.
Yeah.
I mean, he just was like, I went to the library and used a typewriter. Like, are you kidding me?
I think there's some, like him. And...
I go to the library and I mean to write, but then I walk past this aisle of books. I go, oh, that's like a good book. Oh, I've been meaning to check into that. Hour later, I haven't started writing a darn thing.
Yep, that's it. It's a tough thing. And, from what I learned about that, I just basically say that you can't assume that there's one way to do things.
Well, it's
art. Because the minute you do that,
yeah.
Exactly. The minute you think that you're going to find someone who says the way you do it is not the way to do it, and then you'll get, oh God, I shouldn't be doing this. The only thing that's constant with writing is, you have to write, and it's a good idea to edit, and you need to send it out. And that's about it. Mm-hmm. So I don't trust anyone who says you have to outline or you have to go by the seat of your pants, or I just don't trust anybody who gives those kind of absolute writing advices.
Yeah.
Most of my writing's been script writing, so it's kind of ingrained in me to come up with synopsis, and then in stages, synopsis, and then outline, and then... Yeah,
well, you have that very logical kind of linear way of going about it. I'm just kind of like, oh, and what about this? What if you did that? But see, then I get lost, so then I just sort of ramble.
So I wonder, though, if you write by the seat of your pants,
yes.
Which definitely is way more fun.
Yes.
That is so much more fun to do. Because, you're writing, and it's like watching something. You don't know exactly what's going to happen next.
So once you've done that first draft, does that require you to do a little bit more
Do you
rewriting?
sit it in a drawer for a couple of weeks or something, or do you just go straight into the rewrite?
No, I usually put it in a drawer. I try to have the, there's the difference between the editor brain and the writer brain, and I try to keep my editor brain out of the picture when I write, so I have to take a little while to get editor brain back and put the writer brain away and stop feeling all attached to my work and like it's my baby and stuff, and actually approach it with a critical eye. And then I read through and I make a lot of notes, and then I just start editing.
Is there anything that, for example, in your Shambling series, when you went back to do the rewrite, was there anything major that got changed around your rewrite, and you're like, what was I thinking? And you changed?
Not entirely. There was a time when at the end of one chapter there's an announcement that a character's died, and then at the beginning of the next chapter it's, okay, well, this person's missing, let's go find them. And no one caught it until my final line edit, where they're just they send me the dire letter of, if you have to change anything, it's $6 a page, so remember that and try not to make this edit cost us any more money, blah blah blah. And I kind of just emailed my editor, and I'm like, yeah, we're gonna have changes because we kind of have to have this person stay dead. Yes, it is a book with zombies, but this is a zombie who's dead, and usually dead zombies don't come back. So there was that. And then in the second book, there's a minor character who's got kind of a major role in the latter half of the book, but he's kind of not there in the first half. And so my editor said I had to do some major rewrites to put him in the first half of the book.
Right.
So I made him stay with my main character, and then he took a bunch of Benadryl and fell asleep. So I had to have him in the scene, but he didn't do much. So, and it fit the plot, thank you very much. But, yeah, adding that other character was a lot of work. Oh, and I kind of had to blend two characters together of my editor's guidance in the first book. So there's a character who is no longer there, who was there in the first drafts.
Ah, okay.
That's cool.
Okay, so you do write by the seat of your pants, but I'm assuming that you probably do a little bit of research before you write.
Like locations like New York, New Orleans. And did you interview any actual vampires and zombies to get their opinion on vacationing there?
I don't take vampire and zombies' opinions. I don't trust them. I do, if I write in a real world, of course I do a lot of research. Otherwise, I try not to, because I know that research is a hole that you can fall into and never come out of. So oftentimes, if there's research needed, I'll write until I hit a wall where there's research needed, and then I'll look something up. And I found that I have a bad habit of thinking, I need to research X, Y, and Z. And so I buy like 7 books on X, Y, and Z, and then I look at the big book stack and go, oh, I'm overwhelmed, and then I don't read any of them. So I try not to do that and really just look up what I need when I need it.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. And
It's very wise.
so about writing in general, you're writing too, but just in general for people writing, what do you think are some important aspects of character development that you think might be key and sometimes are missing in stories?
Everybody is the hero of their own story, and a lot of people forget that. And so the villain's goal is to be evil, and the sidekick's only goals are to help the main character. And that leads to some pretty weak writing, because almost everybody thinks that they're doing the right thing for whatever reasons, and they need to have those reasons, but they think they're doing the right thing. And, supporting characters are helping the protagonist for their own reasons, and something might come up to where they decide that reason's not good enough anymore. Actually, in my book, I realized that essentially, I'm paraphrasing this to sound more writerly. I did not actually break the fourth wall here, but essentially these two main characters were just like, you know what? We're both the major protagonists of big stories, and we really don't have the emotional capacity to support each other, so I don't think we should date. So I actually had people break up because both of their lives were so overwhelmed with their responsibilities and how they dealt with monsters and everything that they couldn't actually be there for the other one.
That's what happened to Buffy and Angel.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, I think sometimes what happens is writers in television and in books and in movies, they always have this one key character, but they have all these other secondary characters, and they're there just to help the main protagonist. And I think for a movie, that can work out well. But if you have a series that goes anywhere from 12 to 22 or 23 episodes in a season, the fact that these people exist only to support this one person, it's kind of like that main protagonist is going to be kind of a dick, because these people only exist in their world to serve them, and if you don't start developing
Sookie Stackhouse.
Yes, I was just thinking that. But luckily they pointed that out. They're like, you know what? I don't want to be your sidekick. People die when they're your sidekick.
The funny thing is, like, Sookie Stackhouse was my least favorite character in True Blood, in the TV show. And then Buffy the Vampire Slayer, in that TV show, she became my least favorite character pretty quickly. Because, it's just kind of like, these people do have lives of their own, Yeah. And it's like, they always seem to get sort of punished if they try to go off and do something,
Yeah.
And that's where, you can do that for a movie, but when you're watching these people that many hours, it's kind of like, wow, she's kind of a bitch.
Yeah.
Whereas you have an ensemble show like Lost, where everybody's got their own stories.
They all have their own stories, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's the trick, because, but if you have a lead protagonist, you do have characters with different roles, but the trick is to create the illusion and personality of the characters so they don't.
Yeah, an ensemble I
They
think
have their
usually
own
works
lives, too.
better, a more balanced ensemble.
But they're harder to write, though.
Oh, heck yeah. You need teams of people who are going to writing those.
Yeah.
What about flaws? I think one trend, at least in television, is like everybody's super duper flawed. Like they're
I
all
think
like,
it's the pendulum has swung a little bit too far. There are no like real good guys anymore, I don't think.
What's your opinion on that?
Oh, I don't know. You've got to. There's a phrase called "save the cat," which I guess if you're doing script writing, you probably know that phrase. But it's first how you make an unlikable character likable. And I think I just started reading a book today where the main character is, they don't have her save a cat for a while. Not a while, but it's like well into the first chapter. I'm like, am I supposed to be identifying with you? Because you're really irritating. And she was very, very irritating. And I'm understanding that part of the, to put it rudely, part of the book is designed to get her to unclench. But I needed a little bit more reason to like her right off. Because it's like we start reading about this woman and you're like, okay, you're our protagonist. And then I don't want to identify with you. But, you know, if I'd heard like later on, she's like eating Nicorette gum through the first couple of chapters, and finally it talks about how she feels about smoking, and I'm like, I can identify with that. That is a vice, and I quit smoking years and years ago, and yet I can still think about it, and I can identify with that. But I don't know, and I'm not saying smoking is a flaw, but that's one thing that she's trying to get over. I think a lot of people, they hear about something that works, and so they take it to an extreme. So, people want flawed characters. We'll give you incredible flaws. And like, no, I don't want an asshole. Come on.
It is kind of hard to keep reading and keep turning that page when you're, you know, and for me, it's not just with books. It's with books and any kind of entertainment, television or movies. It's just kind of like, if I don't like any of these people, why am I bothering?
Yeah.
You know, and that has killed so many books and TV shows for me, because I'm like, you don't understand, a giant asteroid could come down and kill them all and I won't care. I don't like them.
Which that might be more of a TV trend right now.
A little bit more, because
I'm not sure if that's really a book trend
not
right
as
now.
much in the books I've been reading lately, but yeah.
Now that I think about it. But I'm sure there's some books like that.
There are, yeah.
What's interesting, like in filmmaking, there's independent filmmaking, web series creation has really taken off because of technology and the internet. And but in the book world, it's all about self-publishing, and ebooks have really taken off. So I was wondering what your feelings or views on self-publishing are, and well, the concept that ebooks will threaten to kill print books, will kill the bookstore. So
No, I don't think so. It's okay. Well, first, I'm very bad at doing the kind of thing of anticipating how things like technologies will affect the future. I'm extremely bad at it. Just putting that out there. Secondly, I'm a hybrid author. I'll self-publish some stuff, and I am published with Orbit. And I think that having your eggs in a whole lot of baskets is a very good thing, especially if you're writing something that perhaps your editor doesn't want, but you believe in, or you know something will resonate with your fans, but the editor doesn't want to spend money on it. I think that you know, self-publishing is a great way to go about doing that. I don't know. It's really hard to say because, as I mentioned, I'm very bad at this. I would not have anticipated how much cellular phones would hurt the watch industry. But I realized I know one person who wears a watch now. One. And I always look at her and I'm thinking, what's that thing on your wrist?
Why do you have a relic on you?
Yeah. So,
and just wait until the iTime or whatever it's called comes out, the iPhone equivalent of the watch. Yeah.
Yes, I want a smartwatch, but I'm not sure if I want to go Apple, but that's another story. Essentially, things are going to change. And if people try to keep up with it, I think that they'll survive. And if they don't, that's a problem. I don't even know how it works on the business end, but I really like that Kobo has been working with independent bookstores, so I can actually buy an ebook through my local bookstore and have them get some money, but I get an ebook. I think that was a brilliant move. But I just think things are changing, and the people who are completely balking are going to be the oaks that fall during the tornado, while the people who are bending where they can are going to be the willows that don't. How's that for poetry?
Ooh, I
I did
like
learn
it.
something.
She's putting that master's degree to work.
That's right. You know it.
Now, I'm curious about self-publishing. Is there, I know I've heard of cases where people have self-published and then they get a book deal out of that self-published book. At least there's been some cases of that. Is that something, is there anything, okay, let me reword this question, actually. Let me merge this with another
my
question.
thing's contagious.
Let me merge this with another question, because I know I was going to ask you next, and they kind of link together. So
Okay.
now I know you've used podcasting to tell your stories through audio podcasting by reading your stories, and also there have been plenty of people out there I've heard of before who've also done a blogging equivalent for their stories. So those combined with self-publishing, what's the benefits of doing those things, and what's the dangers? Is there ever a time where you've done that and the publisher is going to be like, I can't touch that because it's devalued now, or does it just not matter? If it's just popular, they're gonna buy it no matter what.
I'm not. Oh, I don't know. It's hard to say. I think some people trust that it's really hard to measure because, marketing's difficult to measure. And if sales are what they want it to be, they can point to the marketing. And if they're not what they want it to be, then maybe they won't point to the marketing. Or maybe they'll point to the marketing and say that failed. But I consider podcasting as essentially marketing first. And, this makes it sound like I planned it this way and I didn't. But first I built my audience via podcasting. So I was able to go to my editor with a book in hand and an audience in the other hand and say, hey, I have people who are interested in this book who might buy it, and here's the book. And I know that influenced them a little bit. They still had to like the book, of course. I don't know. I think Cory Doctorow is doing okay, and he gives away all ebooks, copies of his books. And I'm still podcasting and still building an audience. So I think it's still hard to say, actually. Mm-hmm. I know that's not helping at all, but sorry.
It's a transition phase right now that everyone's going through.
Exactly.
Do you still make or potentially make audiobook versions of your books, or do you feel like you already did that with the podcast?
Well, no, for the Shambling series, I did a professional audiobook, went to a studio and everything, and then the audio producer sent me the files to then later podcast, which actually Ghost Train to New Orleans is supposed to be coming out in podcast form in a couple of weeks. So I need to probably contact them.
I'm curious. You said that you started podcasting your book first, and then approached the publisher with that.
Well, not the Shambling series.
Well, not the Shambling.
No.
Whatever was before then.
Right.
So for that project, I'm curious, since it wasn't already published yet, did you make any changes before it got published based on feedback from readers? Like, did you experiment with that at all?
Not really. This makes me sound like a big jerk, but honestly, I don't like taking a lot of reader input. And my reason why is there are, hundreds, thousands if I'm lucky, of people, and they're all going to have an opinion.
Yeah.
I like when a work is in progress and I have, say, 5, 8 people reading it, those are opinions that I can listen to and take into account and appreciate. Whereas when it's already out, whether it be on the shelves or in the podcast or on the ebook, when there are thousands of people who have opinions and, tens or a couple hundred email me with them, it's overwhelming. And I don't know which one to listen to unless someone says, like I'm being blatantly wrong or offensive in a certain case. I don't really take a lot into account. It makes me
Well-
feel like a big jerk to say that out loud, but it's true.
Well, no, because you can't fall into that trap of trying to please everybody.
Yeah.
Because it's not possible. Because, you'll do one thing. If there's 100 different people, there's going to be 100 different opinions. Or maybe half of them love one idea and the other half hate it. And, what are you going to do?
Yep.
That's what's kind of neat about the book process, because you normally get an editor to help you with that and guide you along.
Yeah, if you find someone that you trust, whose opinion that, you trust, that's one thing. But you can't just, sort of randomly poll the electorate and
Yes.
get
Exactly.
and just get, a way to go.
Yeah. Crowdsourcing your stories can be rough.
So could you tell us about any projects in the works coming down the pipeline that you have that you feel comfortable talking about?
Actually, I can't. I'm between contracts now, so right now I'm working on 5 different books or series to pitch to different publishers. So they're all very different, and I don't know which one of them people will be interested in. So I have no idea. Hopefully I'll be working on a book in a month or 2, but I don't know which one.
Oh, cool. Well, actually, I have a question.
Yep.
You have a lot of this. You are doing obviously a lot of writing. How do you go about that? We know about your creative process, but just in general, do you get up in the morning and do this, and then allot so many hours a day for writing? Do you set aside a certain amount of time, in the evening? Do you write on the weekend, or do you just you get an idea and you have to get it out, so you just throw yourself into it for as long as you can? Everybody kind of has a different process, so I was kind of wondering what yours was.
I wish I had a standard process. Really, I have to write at least 250 words every single day. And if I get it done early, I feel proud of myself. But then at night, I still have a gut feeling of, oh God, I have to write today. Because oftentimes I'll be doing things and it'll be nighttime and I'll be like, oh God, I have to write today. I've been doing this for a while now because after my book came out, I've been doing a couple of freelance projects, but as I said, I don't have a book contract. So when I have a book contract, I do more writing during the day and usually try to get about 1,000 words a day. But right now I'm just trying to maintain consistency and hit 250 words a day.
Is it hard to write at home? Do you have a certain area that you set aside? Do you go somewhere else and kind of...
No, I
get away from it
really
all?
try not. Yes, it's hard to write at home because I work from home and I'm here all the time, and
Right.
things like laundry and dishes and dogs
And phone and-
phone and all that can be distracting. And I find if I do go somewhere, I may focus a little bit better. But if I go to a coffee shop, that costs money, and if I go to the library, that needs pants. Pants are needed at the coffee shop too, but I usually consider
it depends
that
on the coffee shop, I guess.
it's the money's the bigger thing. So if I went to a coffee shop every single day, that would get really expensive. So I usually just write at home also because of laziness. So, and I try to be able to write anywhere and any time because I don't want to be tied to any sort of ritual that can be taken away from me.
That's true. Good point.
Yeah, I really wish I could settle down to a process, but I haven't been able to yet.
Well, it's working for you, so I wouldn't worry about it.
Well, from my book, I didn't get into that until halfway through, and really the deadline was what made me do
He's
that.
like, oh
Yes.
shit,
The deadline will do that.
there's a deadline.
Okay, so that does remind me of another question I would like to ask you real quick. There's different software out there that people can use. I was wondering what you write with, and if you've ever tried something like Scrivener or not.
Oh, I love Scrivener.
Oh.
I'm definite Scrivener convert. So I endorse it to everybody I know.
Great.
I recently picked up Storyist, which is supposed to be like Scrivener on the iPad. I don't know if it's the UI or not having a mouse in my hand or what, but I understand it's got a lot of tools, but I don't find myself wanting to use them. I just kind of open it up because it's a word processor and start typing. So haven't been able to really get a lot out of that, but Scrivener, yes.
Okay, great.
Cool.
I recently got Scrivener, so I'm going to try it out. See
Those,
Excellent.
I always get scared of new. I suck at them all until I use them, and
She likes to write it in.
I actually do write pen and paper still. So
Wow.
well, to get started. For some reason, my brain doesn't always work until I get a pen and.
That's how I have to brainstorm and write ideas.
Yeah,
is
I
pen
write
and paper.
notes down like that. I'm kicking it old school.
Yeah.
Hey, when the lights go out, y'all are going to be lost.
All right. Well, It's been great speaking with you. And but before we go, where can our listeners find you and your work online?
I'm at murverse.com. That's the universe that has all of my stuff.
That's MUR verse.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much for being on the show and speaking with
Hey
us.
guys, this was fun.
This is Simon R. Green. I write science fiction and fantasy series. I think trilogies are for wimps. I've done 12 books in at least 3 series. There's a film coming out, Judas Ghost, and there are short stories and magazines and anthologies all over the place. You'll find me somewhere. And you're listening to GenreTainment.
Well, thanks to Mur for taking the time to chat with us.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. Coming up soon in future episodes, we'll be talking to consultant and writer Lori Shear about her new book, The Writer's Advantage, a toolkit for mastering your genre. We'll also be chatting with Jason Fisher, the COO of Frostbite Pictures, which works on a number of great web series like Divine, After, and many more.
Yes, now before we go, we do want to remind you that you can keep track of us on our GenreTainment Facebook page, Marx's Twitter account, which is at Mr. Marx, our website at GenreTainment.com, or all of the shows on SciFiPostRadio.com.
So that's it for today's GenreTainment. We'll be back soon with all new guests from our favorite films, TV shows, novels, and web series.
GenreTainment is a production of Alien Jungle Bug Productions.
Until next time.
Bad monkey.